Good Tuesday to you, everybody in Com 710. Welcome to week. Boom, bam, 15. 15. You made it. Okay. Much better. Little afternoon tea. I am partial to Earl Grey. Welcome to week 15, the second to last week of the semester. Okay. So, what are we going to be doing this week? Here's what we're going to do. I would like you to focus in terms of your work on your papers. All right. Now, there is a very short, and when you see it, it's like ridiculously short reading and some questions. And the only reason that I put them in, I mean, on the syllabus, there's nothing listed, but I put them in the readings and the questions because in order to maintain the point value for the discussion questions as allotted by way of percentage of the class as spread out over 15 weeks. I have to have 15 weeks worth of questions. Okay. So to help you think about writing, I have for you a little teeny weeny piece from the author George Orwell. Now, some of you know Orwell from his work, 1984 and Animal Farm, but actually, there's a work by him, and I have my copy here. I think it's in the other part of the library. The work that I would encourage you to read from him is On the Road to Wigan, Wigan, Pier. And that's an interesting work because concerning, what we've been doing by way of communication in a global environment. Orwell was hired by a society of socialists in the 1930s to write an expose on the plight of coal workers in northern England. This society is London-based. Okay. So you might say, and this was I think he was hired in 1936, and it was published in 1937. Now you might be saying, okay, so if there's a society of socialists in London and they hire somebody in England to write an expose on the life of coal workers, which he titled The Road to Wigan Pier, how is this international? Well, because the discrepancy between cultures, between the understanding of people who lived in London and the people who lived up north and mined the coal was so significant. It was, in effect, like writing about somebody in a different country. And this is what makes his work interesting. Now, you're not going to read Road to Wigan Pier this week, okay? That's not what I'm talking about. But if you want to read something by Orwell, let me encourage you to read that. I mean, you may have read Animal Farm in 1984. And interestingly, as an author, as a researcher, first and foremost, what he does is he goes and he actually lives with the coal miners. And he goes where they go and he does what they do. And he's like, dang, this is pretty rough. So he is immersing himself in this foreign culture. And then, per his mandate, they said, well, could you write a piece about the plight of the workers that we represent, and what we really, want to get at as a society is why is it that more people aren't joining us politically, and this is where it gets really interesting. So he goes up, he lives with the coal miners, he writes The Road to Wigan Pier, and he says, I can tell you why more people are not joining and supporting your political movement, because the very people that you say you represent, these workers, number one, you don't like them. And number two, most importantly, you don't know anything about them. You don't know their values. You don't know the vernacular that they use. These people that you purport to represent might as well be subjects from another part of the empire because you know virtually nothing about them. And interestingly, they honored the contract with him and they published his piece in that publication. But and this is, if you get a copy of the book, they wrote a little forward to it saying, the views of Mr. Orwell do not represent the position of the society. And, y'all have to take this with a grain of salt, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think he hit the nail right on the head. Okay. But what are you going to read this week? All right. You're not going to read The Road to Wigan Pier. I've given you a connection to a place called Gotham Writers. It's a little publication site that looks at great writers and some of the guiding principles that these writers had for good writing. Okay. And so you're going to read this and it's just, terribly, terribly short. Orwell will say that the good writer, the scrupulous writer, is going to ask questions like, what am I trying to say? What words will best express it? What image or idiom will make it clear? Is this image fresh enough to have effect? Could I put it more succinctly? Have I said anything that's unavoidably ugly? That is both in terms of language and in terms of sentence structure, these sorts of things. So I would like you to read that bit. And then I've got some questions that center around that very short reading. Okay. Now, completing your final paper. Okay. The due date for the paper is the 21st. And some of you have been in touch with me and said, hey, could we get an extension on this? All right. Class ends, strangely enough, on the 27th. That's a Saturday. I know, weird. Okay. I absolutely positively have to have the grades in within 2 or 3 days after the following Sunday. And especially in the spring, because the registrar wants to have all the grades because they're moving towards graduation. You might be saying, well, hey, I'm not graduating. They don't make a distinction between those who are graduating and those who are not. They're just like, give us the grades like right now or else. So they ride me like a circus pony to get these grades in, and I willingly oblige. But if you feel that you would benefit from a small extension, please contact me. Send me an email. All right. And there is a little bit of slack in that week. That is the week of the 21st, which is Sunday, but starting on Monday, the 22nd, that I can give you. All right. I'm not going to just, throw it out there and say, oh, hey, turn it in whenever. If you're on track to finish on the 21st, stay on track. If having a little extra time would be a benefit to you, reach out to me by email and we'll take it from there. Okay. All right, everybody. So work on your third class presentation. And that's an easy one because you're presenting what you're doing by way of your research. Work on your research paper. Read those encouraging words from Mr. Orwell. May God bless and rest his soul. All right. And have a fantastic week. I will see you next week with one final video. And that's it, folks. It's a wrap. Spring semester is done. Okay. So remember, I think about you, I pray about you, and I will see you on Canvas. Take care. Bye-bye.